This is a Power Rangers comic. And this is a Power Rangers Shattered Grid comic. And this is to go even further beyond.
Dawson Rider review.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here with my review of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 31, the beginning of Beyond the Grid. I didn't mean to hit the camera there, sorry about that. This is kind of like an issue 1 of this brand new arc. We've known about this for a while. It was announced and teased, and then of course as we got into Shattered Grid it was teased further. But basically we have this very unique core team that is like the new Mighty Morphin team. I think they're just, obviously still using the title because it's the same comic series, but it's the most recognizable. But you know, for now, we're not following any of the original core MMPR Boom Rangers, meaning the MMPR, yeah, that's what I just said that. I meant like meaning, you know, the core group of the originals. We have Ranger Slayer, we got Zeo Ranger II Yellow, we have Space Red Ranger Andros, Magna Defender Mike, not original recipe Magna Defender, Green Samurai Cam, and then we've got Dark Ranger, aka Heckle, as like the core focus group, as you probably know. That makes it sound like they're a focus group testing something. But yeah, they're on Terra Venture, which is called Promethea. They got the prototype version. And so basically, I think this issue answered one of my biggest questions coming off of the end of Shattered Grid, which is my fridge gonna kick on during this review? And could you hear it? The answer, we'll find out. No, but which was, because at the end of Shattered Grid, as you know, they basically, Team Shattered Grid fixed everything with the mercenaries, the emissaries, and they said, okay, but it won't get set back like it was. So I'm like, okay, is Team Shattered Grid, or Beyond the Grid, gonna be functioning in this world? Did they escape it? Are they separate from it? Seemingly, and I could be wrong here, but I feel like they answered it, that everybody on Promethea basically escaped what Draken did, which was create his like Draken Point world, and then, you know, obviously after that, presumably escaped, or potentially, presumably, escaped the reset of the universe. A couple people have pointed out in various discussions I've seen and or had that the stuff in Beyond the Grid could be taking place when Draken had his fantasy world, meaning that when things get reset by the MMPR Shattered Grid team, that these characters could be fixed. I kind of hope that's not the case, and I'll get into that in a second. But basically, whether or not they are separate from the universe fixing, they are separate from what Draken did. And they've been shoved into this weird, beyond the world, the fringes, like the outer rim, like super outer rim world that's like really weird and dark and strange, and there's very little signs of life. And something that's interesting that I can't believe I didn't think about, and that I didn't even think about last issue, when, I always say that because I'm so used to reviewing episodes week to week. Anyway, that there's going to be more than those 6 Rangers on the ship, because they're rescuing a bunch of Shattered Grid people, and this team we have are basically some of the only ones that can hold their morph power, because there's seemingly no morphing grid in this world, dimension, whatever. And so these 6 have the most limited power, as does Corone, at least at the start of the issue. At least that's what's presumed, but there's a bunch of other Rangers on this ship. There were some that I couldn't tell exactly who they were supposed to be. I know I recognized Joel and Tyler. Joel because he was wearing his hat, and Tyler because they called him out by name. But there is other Rangers on the ship. Mia, I think they called out. Was it Mia? There was definitely some call-outs. Some I feel like I was supposed to know. I'm sure people have gotten it. But there's more than the core team, which I can't believe I didn't even realize until this week, because I'm the dumbest boy in school. But that's super interesting. Obviously, Corone's on there. And it's also interesting because back during Shattered Grid, when they foreshadowed this, the team they showed in place of Ranger Slayer had Corone. And then not long after that, or before, somewhere around that time, we got the tease of Solar Ranger. So many people were speculating maybe something happens to Corone and she becomes Solar Ranger, or disappears and comes back as Solar Ranger. But that's not the case, or at least seemingly. Who knows? Maybe it's her from the future. We don't know right now. Because Corone was on the ship while basically our Beyond the Grid team did like an away team mission to this ship. And while they were on the away team, Corone was morphed and like kind of monitoring everything. And then Solar Ranger showed up, and she looked really cool because she was like wearing a cloak thing. I'm a sucker for like hoodies and cloaks. So she looked really cool, and she like stole all the morphing energy, and specifically seemingly drained Coron's powers completely, and that seems to be where she's getting her powers, because Coron was like, what? There's another Ranger, but there's no Morphin grid. So, and she has like this little button. So seemingly what we know about Solar Ranger is that she looks cool, and that she gets her power or fuels her power by stealing other Rangers' energy or morphing energy. It's also possible that her power could be different from the morphing grid and she's just stealing it for other purposes, but it seems definitely likely that she holds or increases her power by absorbing, because like Solar Ranger, like kind of like solar powered, like you're absorbing the rays, she's absorbing the rays in the morphing grid. I don't know, but it's super cool, super mysterious. But yeah, it was very interesting, very different. I'm definitely intrigued by it. Like, I've mentioned this before, but I was obviously excited for Shattered Grid week to week, but I was extra excited for this just because there's so much more unknown, so many questions I have, both about how the story's going to go for this and how it's going to impact the larger world. Like, when we finish this arc, are we going to go back to the old MMPR team, or are we going to follow somebody else? I'm kind of curious about that. That's like way too far off right now to worry about, since we just started Beyond the Grid, but I have a lot of interest and speculation about this, and I thought this was a really solid first issue. I think it set up a really interesting dynamic, and interesting potential. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm really curious how this might affect things later, because if this does take place, this very well could take place during Draken Point, and then when the Rangers fix everything, the Beyond the Grid team is essentially fixed. But what I would like to see is, when the Rangers fixed everything, the Beyond the Grid team is still stuck. So they're separate from all of this, because seemingly they're not affected by anything that happens to their multiverse. So, because I think it would be interesting if later on they try to get back home and then do, and either we find out that the multiverse got reset without these guys, meaning that like we would see a version of the In Space series without Andros, or Zeo without Tanya, Ninja Storm without Cam, or they would come back to find that like the fixed universe has an Andros, has a Tanya, has a Heckle, has a coinless Kimberly, and so then they sort of exist, you know, in this limbo where the universe got fixed and new fixed versions of them are there, and they're like time remnants basically. I think that would be super interesting if they wanted to continue a potential other like Beyond the Grid arc when they return, about these Rangers trying to find their place in the new multiverse, being the only survivors of Shattered Grid with their memories intact. And it's not just the core team, it's all these other Rangers. That's what I think would be the most interesting. But basically this arc really excites me because there's lots of potential. I think it's super cool that they're doing something different. Like I said, this was a very solid first issue. I'd probably give it an 8. I enjoyed it. Some of the art took some getting used to, but there was also some really cool art pieces. That sounded a weird way of saying it, but like the panel when they all transformed together for the first time looked super cool, and as did the panel when Solar Ranger showed up. So there's definitely some cool art in there, and the panel that shows the kind of weird world they're in. But yeah, overall, solid first issue, definitely different. Keep your mind open. I am looking forward to seeing what is in store next. Anyway, that's about it. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get the notifications for all my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.